So welcome everybody. Today we are introducing to Empowering Change. It's a series of reflection and learning modules designed specifically for ResMap network. Our goal is to embrace resilience and drive meaningful change in our territories. First of all, what is UNESCO? To understand our framework, we must look at UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. Their mission is to promote global peace through international education, science, culture, and specifically they aim to help countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We are part of the Man and Biosphere program from the UNESCO that manages sites of ecological and cultural importance, such as, in our case, Alto Bernesga Biosphere Reserve. UNESCO plays a vital role in Nature Through, the Man and Biosphere program, which manages sites of high ecological and cultural value. But what is exactly a biosphere reserve? There are more just parks. There are living laboratories and places of learning for sustainable development. The Man and Biosphere approach represents a shift from traditional conservation, from human role instead of seeing humans as untouchable or excluded from nature. We take a holistic view where human well-being and ecological go hand in hand. Resource management. We move from protecting static and isolated resources to interconnected modeling for sustainable use. And the main purpose is focused on preserving not only the ecological system, moreover, to preserve all the infrastructure, the people, the ecological issues, the cultural issues, to promote and to conserve, protect all of them. We are part of a massive global community as for the 2025-2026 period. The World Network of Biosphere Reserve includes 784 sites across 142 countries. You can see in the map, all the points are biosphere reserve. Now, why we are here? What is ResMap? It's an international project funded by the European Union through the Primavera Foundation. Our mission is to promote adaptation and mitigation solutions based on WFE Nexus. WFE Nexus is water, energy, food, and ecosystem. What we want is to build landscape resilience against climate change and Mediterranean preserves. This project involves diverse partners across the Mediterranean, from Spain, France, Jordan, Slovenia, Italy, Lebanon, and Morocco. This specific training module is designed to strengthen our technical and conceptual capacities for all of us, and also for people from other places that are interested in that. By following this WFE Nexus approach, we ensure an integrated and sustainable understanding of our vital resources. The projects involve diverse partners as well as diverse objectives. The main one is to create this more resilient and climate change landscape and different specific objectives. One of them is this one, is the capacity building for different issues. Just this training is a part of the context, and in the context has been designed to strengthen technical and conceptual capacities, promoting an integrated and sustainable understanding of resources in line with the project strategies and the WFE Nexus. And now, this is the framework. Let's start. Now, Paul and Blanca, please. It's your turn.
Thank you, Veronica.
My pleasure.
Well, first of all, welcome to everyone that's connected, and thank you for joining us today. My colleague Paul and myself, Blanca, we are the people that are in charge of giving you these courses. Yeah. And today, the first module we've designed it's entitled From Needs to Solutions, Market Assessment, Archetypes, and Prototyping. So what are the objectives and the agenda that we're going to cover today? So we have three main objectives today. The first one is to analyze the context and conduct a market assessment to understand what is the context when we want to do a market assessment and think of a business. Then the second objective is identifying what are the archetypes and the customer segments. And the third objective is to understand testing and prototyping. So these are the three modules or objectives that we'll be covering today. We have here the agenda. You can see it's quite an intense session. We're going to try to make it as light as possible. We'll make a little pause around 5:30 or so to do a little bathroom break or whatever. And if at any point anybody wants to say something, add anything, please feel welcome to write in the chat and or even open your mic and let us know whatever you have in mind. So first, before entering into the actual content of the module, we would like to tell you a little bit about us, who we are. We are Tandem Social. Actually, I'm seeing that our logo is not there, but Tandem Social, we're a medium cooperative consultancy based in Barcelona, in Spain. We have about 14 years of trajectory. We're a team of over 60 people, and we specialize in the social sector. So what we call here in Spain the third economy. So that's the social economy, cooperatives, foundations, and other types of organizations to define their business models. We have accompanied a lot of projects. Here you have some of them. Maybe some of them you won't know because they're Spanish, but then there's a few international ones that we have also accompanied. And our goal is to empower the social sector, in order for these associations and these entities to have a more deeper impact in what is the social economy. So this is the team that is behind this project. As I said, I'm Blanca. I'm there in the middle. Paul, my colleague, who is here, you'll see him in the screen. And then there's a third person who is also helping us, but she's not connected today. Hopefully you'll see her in one of the sessions. And before we start as well, we wanted to hear a little bit about you. It's going to be hard because there's 35 people connected, so I don't think we can have everybody introduce themselves. But we would like to hear a little bit of who you are, what's your job, where you're based, what you know about business models, what do you expect to get from these sessions. So feel free to write in the chat, either individually or in a group. We thought that some of you would be together in groups, in rooms, so that's why we put that option. But I would like to invite a few of you at least to introduce yourselves and write in the chat. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll enter into the content of the session. Who wants to be the first one? Okay, hello, Bernadette. Oh, no, that was from before. Hi. Anybody, the first brave to write something in the chat? Just your name, where you're from. Do you know anything about business models? What do you expect to learn today? Hello, Antoinette Bradan, I guess French?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, it's Bernadette.
Hello, Bernadette. Welcome.
I'm from Lebanon, Erbele, Kisrouan.
Okay.
I'm part of Jabal Musa. I have a small business. I'm an art teacher. Oh, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you very much for being brave. Antoinette wrote in the group, in the chat, Antoinette Radan, ecotourism manager at Jabal Musa Biosphere Reserve in Lebanon. Thank you, Antoinette. Mark Atala, communication manager, also from Lebanon. He works in the Association for the Protection of Jabal Musa. Okay. Jabal Musa, the group in Lebanon, is very brave right now, putting their info. Anybody else from another place wants to add something? Hello, Marie. Marie from Montbento in France. I'm working on a business model to produce bread and cereal produces. Nice. Welcome, Marie. Somebody else wants to share? No? Okay. No worries.
Hello. Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
I'm
Hello.
Nora Aisha. Yeah. And with me, Nadia and Halima, the three of us. So we are from Onzua. We are working in the Arganeri Biosphere Reserve.
Yes.
And we are also for the RISMAP projects. We are the leaders of the work package 5, which the main work of the work package is the implementing 7 business model, innovative business models. So we are working with the other biosphere reserves on creating and implementing 7 sustainable business models. So,
Okay.
so actually, we have some ideas about business models and
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So maybe some of this stuff we'll explain today, you already know.
Yeah,
Great.
maybe.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We have Tatjana. Hi, my name is Tatjana, and I'm from Slovenia. I work at the Skojan Caves Park. Our business model involves establishing a fruit and vegetable processing center. Welcome, Tatjana. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Cynthia from Lebanon, producer, freelance media producer, and small business owner, stories of a kitchen, homemade desserts, and cakes. Awesome. Welcome, Cynthia. Hello, Sara, from, I'm assuming, Italy. Federica Volsliciani. We're working on the Po Delta Biosphere Reserve, Italy, for a business model on oyster farm. Great. Well, we have some very interesting businesses here today. Well, thank you all very much for the ones that you shared. The ones that you didn't share, it's okay. We'll have more opportunities to share throughout the course. So if we pass this slide, Paul, to the next. Yeah. So one last thing before we enter into the content of the course, keep in mind, we have 5 sessions. They're going to happen every Tuesday at this time, starting today until the 13th of May, which is the last one. Apart from these 5 sessions, we will also be providing individual or group mentoring sessions for each of the reserves. We have some hours allocated for you. And the idea is throughout these 5 sessions to identify how we can best use these hours for the needs that you might have in your projects. Yeah, so just keep this in mind, and we'll be talking more throughout the 5 sessions. And now I'm going to hand over the lead to my colleague, Paul, who is going to start with the first block of the session.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. This AI translation is also news for us. So if something doesn't work, let us know. Feel free to interrupt, to ask questions regarding the content or the logistics of this session. There's an open floor for comments, questions, ideas, whatever comes to your mind. So feel free and comfortable, please, to intervene. Okay. So basically, we're moving now straight into the topic of market assessment. Okay, we will go from the high level of why of business ideas of projects into the how of how to make a market strategy, along the 5 sessions that my colleague Blanca explained. We will make it as interesting as possible and engaging, but again, and clear as well. But again, please feel free to interrupt, discuss, comment any ideas. For starters, we like to start with two important ideas we should keep in mind when designing any and thinking of any social business models. The first idea is that business ideas do not exist in a vacuum. They exist within a delicate balance of resources and community needs. And before you can propose a solution, you must understand the environment you are trying to change or you are trying to operate in it. And the second idea is that no one cares about the product or service. People care about needs and preferences. Hence, we will not start thinking of products directly, but we will think of products directly, sorry, but we will think of problems or needs and solutions first, okay? In terms of context, let's go with an important introduction that will guide this session, the itinerary, and as well all the examples that we will work along the sessions. This is the heart of the framework of the sessions, which is the WEFE nexus, okay? Water, energy, food ecosystems. Traditionally, in business ideas, these are treated as separate environments, right? A farmer cares about good food, an energy supplier cares about energy, an environmentalist cares about water, but in our context, they are inseparable, okay? There are mutual benefits and mutually beneficial responses based on understanding the synergies of water, energy, agricultural policies, and there are also trade-offs. So we must be transparent about the interdependence of these ecosystems. If you create a solution that uses, for food security, for instance, that uses excessive water, you are solving one problem by creating or increasing another one. Hence, considering this approach, this WEFE nexus in social business models, means creating context-specific solutions. Okay, this is you will hear this throughout the sessions based on the interventions that we discuss. These interventions can be public policies, but they could also be social businesses achieving economic, environmental, and social goals. Okay, so this nexus basically forces us to look for these synergies where one intervention helps different areas at once, and it forces us to be honest as well. We do not know everything. We need cross-sectoral communication and collaboration, and we need transparent governance to be able to map all the potential impacts in this WEFE nexus. Okay, often when we start hearing this type of speech, or a business pitch from a social economy stakeholders, or sometimes from traditional business stakeholders, we get thrown the concept of innovation, right? We need innovation. People will come at us with the idea that we live in an uncertain, volatile, complex world with increasing societal challenges, increasing inequality, demographics, climate change, pollution, residuals, international trade dependence, and we must innovate. We need to find new ways of relating to our environment and alternative ways of generating collective value. That's a fact, but that can still be very generic, no? And it is sometimes hard to think of oneself as an innovator, right? So we will try to unpack a little bit the concept of social innovation into three forms of innovation. Innovation can be sometimes incremental, which is betterment, improvement. You take a process that already exists, say local olive oil distribution, for instance, and you improve the communication or the organization or the logistics. It's not a big shock, but it makes things more efficient, and that's extremely valuable. It's innovation and it's valuable. But the innovation could also be radical, which is a transformation. It's not just a better version of the old thing, but redefines how value is offered. One example that we work very often in Spain is food hubs. I don't know if you've heard that word, but that's basically moving, for instance, from individual farm sales or agricultural sales to an integrated regional cooperative with its own logistics. And that changes the way of offering value, because it's not me anymore, it's us. It's a group of producers making a production change that offers value in a different way. Okay. And third, innovation could also be disruptive, no? The new reality. When you create something that did not exist before, like a new packaging made from local agricultural waste, which changes both the residuals of the existing economic activity and creates a new economic activity, and changes also how consumers behave and interact and what do they expect about a product or a service. These are all different ways of generating collective value, and they are valuable themselves, okay? In this current chaos of our world, we need different types of social innovation to find alternative ways of generating collective value that are, collective, as we said, and that they guarantee security and stability to local producers, to consumers, and that generate social good. Okay, that's the first introduction on making clear that everything is valid when thinking of business ideas if it helps to some extent to solve societal challenges and business needs or consumer needs, that we'll go into it. But how do I make this type of innovation? No, there are different levels of innovation, and there are different elements in which you can innovate. Okay, you could innovate by offering a differential value, no, a different future, something that is a special source, something that is new to your territory, or it's a little improvement of an existing failure, covering a need that it wasn't covered yet, and gives a differential value to our consumers. But it could also be an innovation based on the changes in consumption models. The world has changed. People sometimes want the same thing, but they expect different consumption models, like digital ones. They expect different payment models, no, like adapted or long-term or flexible or whatever. They want new ways to contract services. They expect to participate in the governance, for instance, because there's a push for cooperative models. So they expect a different type of consumption. That's another way of innovation, of a different way of innovating. Or we can innovate by offering new aspirational traits, no? Giving an idea, a product, a service that is desirable to an extent. Innovation doesn't need to be only about, it works, but it's about people want it, it is convenient. It inspires people because they want to be the kind of person that uses that new product, that new service. Okay, these are different ways in which you can think, what's your idea offering? Is it offering a new value, covering a need that wasn't covered yet? It is offering just a different consumption model, or it is giving people a new aspirational trait. And that's what we need to see when we do a market assessment. Okay, market assessment is not ticking boxes, but it's sort of a way of anticipating a little bit, see what are the threats, like regulatory changes or opportunities. It's about learning from what other people are doing. Sometimes in different countries, they might be creating value in a way that it's not present in your country, or that it's not adapted to the cultural circumstances of your country. It's about understanding customer evolution. Clients are not static, so they might need new things over time. It's about covering new risks that appear, like stability in global chains, for instance. Maybe that's a risk that needs to be covered with additional products or services. And in the end, it's about making strategic decisions, okay? Anticipating to these new needs, to these risks or to these new trends in consumptions, to be able to understand and make decisions. Okay, these are the three words that we keep in mind when we think of market assessment: anticipate, understand, and make decisions that can cover needs, risks, or trends in consumption. One example of social innovation in Spain, in this case, is Imperfect. Okay, this is a project, is a company created by the Foundation Espigoladors, in case you want to hear it, which is a practical application of a market assessment in the Mediterranean, and it's actually a great success story. Okay, it's a social enterprise that identified a gap in the market by looking at environmental and social pains simultaneously. Okay, keep in mind the word pains because we will see it later on. Sorry if I'm a bit too fast. I'll slow down in case the AI needs a little bit of time to process. As I was saying, this is a real world example in Spain that we in Tandem Social have worked with them. And they started by identifying two massive problems, okay? Environmental one, huge amounts of surplus fruit, vegetables, everything was being wasted simply because they were ugly or didn't meet, retail standards, supermarket good looking apples, basically. This is a direct failure in the Nexus framework. Okay, we're wasting the water, the energy, and the food and the land used to grow this food, and this is common across European countries. And they also identified a social need: high rates of unemployment among vulnerable groups at risk of exclusion, like people coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds in Spain. Okay, and they saw this environmental challenge and this social need, and they saw a market interest, a growing social awareness around healthy, local, sustainable food. And their product idea was to transform that waste into high quality jams, pâtés, compotes, vegan products, in a way that it contributes to the reduction of food waste by transforming these fruits and vegetables, while promoting the integration of people at risk of social exclusion in the labor market. So it bridges the three circles. Okay, they take the imperfect surplus, transform it into good jams and pâtés, and use a workforce of people at risk of social exclusion. I don't know if this rings a bell as something that could happen in your countries, or of similar examples. Just wondering. Well, feel free to, again, as I said, to interrupt, to say, oh, this rings a bell, there's something similar in our surroundings. So basically, but what is interesting in terms of market assessment is that they didn't just start cooking, because even a project with a great heart must survive the market pillar or the test. So they conducted a good market assessment. They didn't just hope people would buy. They looked at the size and the evolution of these type of products: natural, organic, vegan products. They looked at competitors in the sector of jams, pâtés, compotes. They look at the evolution and consumption trends in Catalonia and in Spain, and they did some benchmarking to look for competitors. No, what were the values, the value proposition that competitors were offering, prices, quality of the product, packaging, values as well, transmitting values of health or of ecology, et cetera, et cetera. And did this benchmark, who else is making jam, how are they different? So they didn't just sell jam, they sold the job creation, they sold this increased market access for people, and they sold these ecological and social values. That's one example, but there could be many. There could be other examples. Yes, I see we have similar companies in Slovenia, and there's a trend to try to catch this type of consumer. So basically, what we want to show you today is a tool to start doing this market assessment. You will see along the different sessions that we will try to finalize always with a small exercise and a small tool for you to replicate the explanation. In this case, one of the things that we want to work today is archetypes and customer segments, okay? Identifying potential consumers. We are moving from the big picture of the market into the human picture. It's not only statistics about the market, because businesses don't sell to markets, they sell to people. So in this section, we will try to strip away the specific characteristics of the human beings that will buy these products. And we will try to group them, understand the motivations, understand how to think of potential clients, and give you some specific tools to work on these clients. Because as I said in the beginning, we do not care yet about products or services. We care about the needs. So we need to put the user at the center of any design. The user is not the end of the chain that we need to go and chase, but it's the center of the design process. They do not care about our product or service. People care about what they need or what are their preferences. Okay. Asking first question, who are we designing for? Are we designing for a digital native in a city or an aging farmer in a rural area? Do we know their needs? Do we know what they express to others? What do they ask the mayor? What do they ask to their relatives? What do they ask to companies in the village? We must ask questions to analyze the market. And to do this, empathy is a great tool. We are not looking for users. We're looking for what people need. So we need to ask ourselves, what makes their life difficult? Do I have a solution that removes this difficulty, or it just adds a new layer of complexity? A typical example of social business models. If you have a business idea that requires someone to learn something, to save 5% on water, but that does not solve any issue from him, that design is not user-centered, okay? We will see this tomorrow, but essentially what we are saying here is that the values very, very, very often are not enough to make someone buy something. Users come to solve needs, and sometimes they stay for the values, Okay, that's one of the core ideas that we wanted to share. Sorry, I'm trying to read at the same time the comments in the in the chat. Okay, so that's one point. So basically, as we were saying, empathy is a great tool. And beyond or before, let's say before demographics, we need to understand who is our potential user or potential consumer. No, what do they see? What's in their environment? What do they see in the local news regarding food production or water scarcity or prices? Or what do they see in the that their friends are doing? Do they have competitors around, or do we have competitors around? What do they hear from the neighbors or from politicians? What do they think? What do they feel? Do they have some fears? Do they have aspirations? No, I would like to, I don't know, learn something to grow as a person. Or if our client is a company, I would like to grow my business. They might say they want to save the planet, but they feel and they fear of not being able to pay back some debt or pay back the mortgage. So we must make sure we understand and we hear those thoughts and those feelings. Okay. And also, what do they say and what do they do? How do they behave in public? How do they behave in the market? And by mapping this, by asking ourselves these questions, we will be able to identify two very important things that we will elaborate later on. We will identify pains, frustrations, risks, obstacles, and we will identify gains. What do they want? What do they need? What feeling of success they have, and our proposal, our approach to them needs to be the painkiller for these pains and the gain creator for these goals. Okay. We do not need to remember these questions by the line, but we are building up the process of how we think about customer segments, okay, which is putting the user at the center. So going straight into archetypes. A customer archetype is basically a type of segmentation based on common characteristics within a group of people. It's not a real person. It's a profile that represents a group of people with similar behaviors, goals, pains, and jobs to be done. It's a way of grouping people by behaviors and needs rather than just age, location, and whatever. And to understand an archetype, we look at three things: customer jobs, customer pains, and customer gains. Okay. First of all, jobs, they are not professions. They are the tasks that the customer is trying to get done in their life. Okay. It can be a functional thing. I need to buy healthy food for my family and my kids. It can be an emotional type of job. I want to feel I'm a good person who cares about the planet. Or I want to be proud of myself in front of my kids. And they can be social jobs. No, I want to show sort of publicly to show that I support local ethical brands. These are the jobs that people are trying to get done by consuming. And these are the type of things that we must know from customers. Pains. Pains are the obstacles that keep people from doing these jobs. What annoys them about current solutions? Food is expensive. What's the frustration that they have? The store is far from our neighborhood. Or what is they have a frustration related to food waste, for instance. No, the shop that they have nearby wastes a lot of food, and that makes them feel bad because they don't have an alternative. That's a customer pain. Or they fear that, you know, healthy food is too expensive, or doesn't taste very good. That's their pains, their problems, their frustrations, their concerns. And what are the gains? Which are the results and benefits that the customer receives from their current practices. Okay, it's not just, you know, like buying jam. It's the practical solutions, the satisfactions, or it could be, you know, like the price, for instance. And when we do this, we must acknowledge that in the current situation, which means without us involved, they already have gains. They already have positive things in their current consumption model or consumption pattern. So we need, you know, as we said earlier, to be the painkiller for the pains and, you know, maximize or improve their current gains. That noise, I'm not sure if it was a hand. No, it was just someone asking to be accepted in the session. Okay, so let's put an example to this type of archetype. Okay, let's call someone Sofia, a 35-year-old, you know, professional, whatever, living in a city near a biosphere reserve. Okay, she has some customer jobs. Okay, she wants to buy high quality food. That's a functional need that she has for her family, and she has also like an emotional job to be done, which is reducing the carbon footprint of her diet. That's the jobs she wants to get done. And she also has some pains, you know, which is that the current options that she has are pure greenwashing, brands that claim to be eco-friendly, but she thinks they are not, or she sees or she feels that they are not. She also struggles to find products that are as natural or that are vegan as she would like. And, you know, we could add the layer, just to follow the previous example, we could add the layer that she feels guilty about the amount of food waste she sees in supermarkets. But still, she has some gains in the current model, which is buying in the supermarket right next to her apartment, which is that she's often in a hurry and needs products placed practically in the convenience store next to her apartment, and she does not want to go to a specialized organic grocery store, whatever. And also has some gains in the current model, which is that she likes still bringing the high-end, delicious food that she manages to buy in the supermarket, because it becomes a nice conversation starter in a party or in a dinner or whatever. So she does have some gains in the current model. So when we understand that these are the things that she's currently experiencing, a job, a pain, and a gain, is that when, you know, marketing or product placement stops being just advertisement and starts being a solution. You know, it's not just promoting a jam. It's about identifying correctly which needs, which pains are we covering, and what gains we are maximizing based on what we know from this person early on. Is that clear as a scheme, the idea of customer jobs, customer pains, and customer gains? Is that more or less, I don't know, like the people that mentioned that have projects like the I don't know, people who intervened early on, like Bernadette, Antoinette, Mark, Nadia, I think, Tatiana, Cynthia. Do you have have you thought of business models starting by these three ideas? You can answer through the chat and just say yes, no, whatever.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel very identified with Sophia.
Mm. Okay, feel free to, as I said, to reach out, discuss, share ideas, share comments in the chat, or speak out loud. Okay, but essentially that's the first point. Okay, we didn't do this exercise yet, but we should do it with you. No, Mari, don't worry. That's the first let's say concept of the session. We will give you exercise later on. That's the first idea. I was just asking if anyone has done it before or has a previous idea. Okay. Thanks for contributing, Mark, as well. Okay. So that's one point. Okay, identifying who we are, who we are trying to help. Identify behaviors, needs, concerns, interests, making groups of people or organizations. Archetypes could be organizations as well. So that we are able to, focus our efforts, adapt the language, design solutions that fit this specific context. Okay, this specific group of people. Once we've created an archetype, can you give us an example? Yeah, Marie, we were discussing the example of Sophia, like this person, this 35-year-old professional living in a city near a biosphere reserve that has customer jobs. So she needs to buy high quality food, and she would like to reduce carbon footprint of her diet. That would be her functional jobs and emotional jobs. She has some pains because the current options that she has to solve this issue are, often greenwashing strategies. So companies and brands that claim to be eco-friendly but are not. She, sometimes struggles to find gourmet products that adapt exactly to what she needs. And, she has different problems with the current options of high quality ecological food, but she also has some gains in the current model, like it's close to her apartment, and when she's in a hurry, well, that's very helpful. She doesn't want to go far away, and etc., etc. So once we've defined the archetype, we are moving into creating the customer segment. Okay, based on the archetypes. Now we explore how many of them are there. That's when geography, age, income level, market size comes in. Okay, archetypes focus on who they are and why they act, motivations, pains, jobs, gains. And we use the archetype to design the product or to think about the product. And when we move to customer segment, it's about business scale and marketing reach. How many people are there of those archetypes that we define. In here, it's very interesting to distinguish two things, which is a very common trap in social business, which is that very often the person using our product is not exactly the person or organization paying for it. Okay, the user cares about usability, functionality, how it solves daily programs. The payer cares about either returns or budget limitations or long-term sustainability. So, for instance, thinking of a a service or a product offer whatever to businesses, like water monitoring sensors. Farmers might be users, but maybe the regional government is the payer. No, so we have to create value propositions to both of them. If the farmer loves it, but the government thinks it's too expensive, there's no sale. And if the government buys it, but the farmer says it's too complex and it's hard to use, there will be no impact, and maybe there will be no future sale either. Okay. So basically, as we said, we are moving from the archetypes to the customer segment, and this is, as we said earlier, that the process and the empathy map and what we showed early is not about remembering by the line the questions that we were asking. It was just to build up, how we think about customer segments. And to work on customer segments, we propose you this fish, and this is where we think it is useful that you work on your own later on. We will give you the exercise, but it's basically a way of defining customer segments. Okay, name, who are they? Is it like a group of people like Sophia, like the example that we gave, or is it small and medium enterprises, or is it foundations, or is it other social economy organizations, or it could be big corporations that have responsible another social corporate responsibility policy. It could be people, it could be businesses, it could be big organizations, it could be governments. Okay, and we need first to name them. We need to describe them. Do they have a big budget, or do they have a small budget? Do they not even pay for it, and we need to think of someone else to pay for their consumption? Where are they located? What's their legal figure? Maybe there are limitations to consuming or to using our goods or our services for some specific legal figures, like for big corporates or for small enterprises. What's their sector as well. And we need to identify their need. Why do they buy? Okay, so basically that's what we were discussing, the customer jobs that we commented earlier. Why do they need to buy? What are the things that they are trying to get done? And we need to think of the characteristics of the different, the second set of questions that we introduced earlier. Are they satisfying this need in a different way at the moment? And if so, what are their current happiness? What are their current gains? And what are their current pains? Okay, let's recall the case of Sophia. Let's say Sophia represents a customer segment of people between 30, 40 years old with a good income. They are professionals working in high-paying sectors, located in urban areas or suburban areas outside, but close by biosphere reserve. They are individuals working in whatever sector, and they want to buy food because they want to eat healthy. That's why do they buy, but also because they want to align a little bit more their consumption with their values, reducing the carbon footprint of their life. This is their current needs. Question: are they satisfying this need in a different way at the moment? Yes, because everyone is already eating, so of course they are already eating and satisfying the need for food. Maybe, and that would be a pain, in a worse way than they would like. No, it's not as healthy as they would like, or it's not as ecological as they would like, because it comes from big corporations or brands that do greenwashing. Okay, But do they have some gains? Yes, as well. Why? Well, because it's close to their apartment. They do not need to drive to buy groceries, etc., etc., etc. These are the gains and the pains. So once we've identified these 4 boxes, why do they buy? How are they satisfying this need at the moment? What are their gains and what are their pains? Then we can start thinking of our product or our service. What are we offering and what's the specific value proposition that we are giving them? In the case of S Imperfect from the Especuladors Foundation, the example that we gave in the beginning, well, it would be we are offering high quality jams produced by using products that would be wasted otherwise in a company that gives job opportunities to people at risk of social exclusion. That is offered in traditional supermarkets. So you do not need to go to specialized organic stores. You do not need to go to buy, to specialized posts. Okay. I don't know, again, if anyone would like to share an example of, a process of thinking of a product or business that they've done before that aligns a little bit with this, or what's your experience with thinking of the value proposition of your product? Thoughts, ideas, experiences, comments are welcome. I'm assuming it's a no. Okay, no worries. Basically, let's move on. Again, feel free to share if anything is unclear. If a question is not clear, feel free to ask. So, questions. No, what examples of questions we should ask ourselves to determine our customer segment? Who do we create value for? Who will use our products? Are these the same type of people, organizations, or do we have different payers and users? What are their characteristics? How do they usually, spend their money or solve these needs, etc., etc., etc. This is important because we cannot reach everyone. We need to focus. We cannot, as we were saying in the beginning, we cannot start producing jams like crazy and expect that someone, for whatever reason, will start buying them. We need to think who we are targeting, who we are going to reach out to offer specifically our product or service to solve a specific need or to offer a specific solution. Okay, and the definition of this customer segment will define the rest of the business model, which is something that we will elaborate tomorrow. Okay, but this is very important because that's the start of designing how our company will work, what alliances do we need, what resources do we need, what are the potential revenue of our idea, because then we will see what's their potential budget to be spent on this topic, what are the costs as well. Maybe we have a customer segment that has very large distribution costs because we need to bring the product or service directly to their homes or to their headquarters if it's a company. Okay, so it's very important to think early on about customer segments before defining all the product and service. And of course, we can already incorporate social impact into this dimension. We can think of how we incorporate social impact when defining customer segments. because we can think of different prices, we can think of different scholarships, we can think of discounts, we can think of many elements that will make that the selection of customer segments adds social value. We have different examples on how to do this. Incorporating customer segments that cannot access due to the design or the nature of the product. Readable books for people with disabilities. That's a very clear way of incorporating social impact just by defining who is our customer segment. But it could also be small-scale organic farmers who cannot buy from traditional providers of fertilizers because these traditional providers only sell at large scale, or they only sell in urban areas near to big distribution points. These are people that are excluded from traditional solutions. And if we make them our customer segment, we are making sure that our business model has a social impact, okay? Or we could have as well people who cannot access for economic reasons, people who need, as we said earlier, scholarships, or we need different price structures. Yes. And actually, what we can do is, we can define several customer segments. Actually, we would need to choose at least enough segments to ensure that our model is sustainable. And these various segments might need different types of products, or might need different points of sale, or might need different prices, or might need different advertising techniques to tailor what we are offering to their characteristics. And all together, all these customer segments together form the target market, okay? And note, actually, that different segments could help us have a larger impact in our project. Why? Because we can cross-subsidize or cross-finance services through price discrimination. How? Well, for instance, charging different prices to large and small producers. And that could be actually also a value proposition to some customer segments. For instance, with fertilizers, we could have the same fertilizer offered to small-scale producers, in which the value proposition would be, we bring it to your headquarters, something that you do not have with large-scale providers. It is made with organic production means of production, and that would be the value proposition to small-scale producers or farmers, or you name it. And to large-scale farmers, the value proposition would be, it is also organic, but also you will be helping reaching small-scale producers in biosphere reserves. So that's why it's important to ask the question on why do they consume different archetypes and customer segments, and what are the specific gains and specific pains that they have across types of organizations, people, or public administrations. Yes, that's a little bit the purpose of this first part of the session. To sum up, the idea is people do not care about your product or your service early on. They care about a need or a solution. And that's what you need to ask yourself, okay? People might have a need, but they are solving it in a way already at the moment. So you need to identify exactly what's the way they are solving this need at the moment, and what pains and gains this current solution puts to them, okay? and try to reduce the pains and promote or maximize the gains. Once you've identified this first set of questions, you can start thinking of the characteristics of the product or service that you had in mind early in the beginning of this session or in the beginning of your business idea. Okay, so this fish that you see right now, that's the first tool that we are sharing with you in these sessions. Okay, you should be able, when you have a business idea, to answer these questions for your project. Who is the person that you want to reach out? Characterize them. How are they? Location, income, legal figure, sector. Think if it's a person or it's an organization or it's a public administration. Think if the payer and the user, it's the same. And if it's not the same, you will have to do the fish twice. Okay? And then start thinking, okay, what is their job to be done? Why do they buy? How are they satisfying this need right now in a different way? Very often they will have lower quality solutions for your need. So make sure you properly identify what's the current solution, the gains and the pains that this gives, and then start thinking of your product or service. That's the first fish that we will share with you at the end of the session. But I would like to hear, questions, ideas, thoughts, comments. Do you think this makes sense in your case? Do you think it's too much, text for designing a business model? We could summarize the first hour of session in this fish. Does it make sense? I see some faces and I would like to see these people speaking. Yes, it makes sense. People that have tried to reach out customers, any thoughts, any ideas? Thank you, Nura, for the thumbs up. Do you feel confident with filling this in for your idea? If you are an entrepreneur or if you work in a biosphere reserve, do you feel confident about printing this fish and start filling it in before start working? For instance, people who work in tourism, or people working as art teacher, or people working in other small and medium enterprises. Do you feel confident with this fish? Hopefully, yes. Okay. Okay, great. So that was it is good start. Thank you, Maria, for answering. Okay, that's the first tool. Now we had planned a small pause for water, bathroom. I don't know, Veronica, if it feels okay to have like a small pause here before we keep going with testing and prototyping.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, we're gonna take a little break now. Yes, please. Okay. So we're gonna take a 15-minute break.
Mhm.
So it's 5:20 p.m. Central European time, which I'm sure is not the same in Lebanon or in other places. So see you in 15 minutes. So at 35. You don't have to leave the meeting. You can just turn your camera off and your silence, and we'll see you here at 35.35. Yeah? Great. Thank you all.
Thank you. See you now.
Hello, everyone. We're back from the pause. I hope everyone had time to drink a little water, go to the bathroom, take a little break. Yes, so we're gonna get back to the session and start this third block, which is gonna be centered in testing and prototyping. I'm gonna try to speak a little bit slower than I was doing previously in order for the IE to work its magic, and hopefully everybody can understand well. If not, don't hesitate to let me know by chat. Okay, well, Paul has done a very good job at explaining everything about archetypes, segments, and now what we're going to enter into is testing and prototyping. Yeah. So to start from the basics, what do we mean by prototyping, and a little bit of the context of what prototyping is. So in a broad definition of what prototyping is, prototyping means to make an idea into something tangible. Yeah, we have an idea, something that's a little bit maybe not very defined yet of what a business is, an idea of a product, a service, of anything, any type of business can be prototyped. And what we want to do is make something tangible out of this idea in order to learn about it and to see if it's adequate to what we want to sell or what we want to provide, and to see if it's not only adequate, but also if it's feasible. Yeah. Here we're going to start introducing also a few concepts of what feasibility is of a product or a service. And so the essence of prototyping is we want to validate this idea that we have for a business. No, we want to validate, we want to learn about this idea and test it in a way before we can launch anything, no, any product, any service, before we can launch it out into the market. Yeah. So it's about polishing our ideas, and we with the main objective of saving costs, time, and resources. Yes. So we're going to enter a little bit more into this context also. Important to say this phrase: we want to fail quickly in order to success sooner. It might sound a little bit ambiguous at the beginning or contradictory. It's like, why do we want to fail? Well, in order to get to the final product that is viable, feasible, that the customers want, we probably have to go through several products or services that have failed in the way before that product became what it is. The sooner we fail, the faster we can learn what is going to be successful. Yeah. So we want to devise a solution, we want to test it, and we want to learn along the way of this process. Yeah. It's a way of experimenting. Yeah. As it says here, the idea of prototyping is also that we make a low investment at the beginning. That's why we're talking about saving money. So by also investing a little bit, we can also learn and answer some questions about what our product or our service is going to be, and to validate the solutions, make decisions, and align the team about the direction of that our product is going to go. Yeah, the product or the service. So the context is we want to validate an idea, and we want to make sure that this idea is tangible and it's feasible, and obviously the sooner the better. But it's a process that can't be rushed as well. We have to respect the process, and there's a series of phases that we're going to have to go through in order to do this prototyping. So why do we need to prototype? Why should we prototype, no? Not why do we need to do it, but also why should we do it, no? Prototyping means that it's gonna help us think, and it's kind of a barrier, yeah, between a hypothesis, an idea, and what is something real, yeah? And also the prototyping helps us multiply the amount of ideas about one problem, yeah? Maybe I have one problem identified, and by prototyping, maybe I'm gonna come up with many different solutions, ideas that I'm gonna have to test, or I should be able to test in order to see which one is the ideal one to give a solution to this problem, yeah? Also, prototyping means that I'm communicating. I'm communicating and expressing my ideas with clarity. By sharing my ideas with other people, that's also going to help me learn and obtain information from the key buyer, no? The person or persons that I want to sell my product or my service to. And in this process of communication, and I'm also identifying errors, yeah? So one first prototype is going to show me that there's an error of the cost associated to it, for example, no? Or there's an error of the concept of the product in itself that my buyer is not going to want to buy, or there's another type of error, yeah? So the idea with this communication is also to generate this room for improvement, yeah? And the third thing that why should we test, no? Well, prototype is actually to test. It makes users and potential users also and other actors experiment and react to what I'm proposing, yeah? So this is also a form of validating the decisions, yeah, in this process. So this also gives us key information that we're gonna need, no? How do people perceive what I'm proposing, no? How do people react to it? Is this product, I can't think of the word right now, but is it capturing the attention, no? Is it valuable for the person that I'm trying to sell this to? So it's all about validating and obtaining valuation, no, from my potential users. And so what are the main benefits of prototyping? I said why we should prototype. So we should prototype because there's benefits associated as well to the prototyping. I mentioned a little bit before, economic benefits. When we first think of an idea and we prototype it for the first time, if we're using a low budget to prototype, that's also creating, it's lower cost than a full product development. If I make the full product development from the beginning, but I haven't prototyped it, then it's money that I'm going to be throwing away because I haven't tested it. And then once it's out there, people don't buy it, yeah? So it's lower cost, this prototyping, that development, the full product. And also what I was saying before about feasibility, oops, sorry, I reacted to that. So it's also simulating a value proposal, and I'm presenting it to other users, and I'm ensuring that the feedback I'm receiving, yeah, is that there's a demand for this product, yeah? So, and overall, I'm obtaining economic benefits. So prototyping is never a waste of money, and it's always recommended to do, because in fact, it's gonna, the turnover is gonna be it's gonna be economically beneficial in the long term, yeah? There's also operational benefits, yeah, in the sense that prototyping is less time consuming than the final production of the solution, yeah? We're testing a little part of what the product is going to be and validating along the way. So it's time effective, it's less time consuming than the full development of the product. It's also allowing us to refine the idea or the service or the products that I'm designing, yeah, based on the responses that the user is providing, yeah. The user is testing it and it's giving me responses that is like giving me feedback in order to continue evolving my products or my product or my service. Yeah. So, and overall, it saves time, it saves effort, and it saves money, as well as minimizing the waste that would come if we did a full development in the beginning and it didn't work out. Yeah. And it's also providing team benefits, because a prototyping phase is one where there's creativity and there's co-creation and there's a whole team of people behind this idea that is working together, and it's creating like a team spirit in a way. Yeah, if you're doing your business within a group, this phase of prototyping is also a chance to share together thoughts, experiences, and do team building in a way. It also reduces misunderstandings at the beginning and improves the specificity of whatever I'm designing. Yeah. We need to be aligned in what we're producing, what we're designing at the beginning. And so this is also a way of ensuring that once we reach the final process of producing whichever service or product, the whole team behind it, the idea is aligned in what they want to accomplish. Yeah. So, and overall, there's an alignment within the team, and it improves the involvement and the decision-making of everybody that's behind this idea. So what can we prototype? We can prototype anything and everything. And actually, everything and anything should be prototyped, as I was saying before. We can prototype processes and workflows. We can prototype physical objects and environments. We can prototype videos, video games, audiovisual content, experiences and users' journeys, ecosystem service, and digital tools such as webs and apps. Everything and anything can be prototyped. Yeah. And there's different ways of prototyping depending on these different examples that I have given you. And some tools are more adequate for some type of prototyping than others. And we will see a little bit more about that in the following slides. So these are the phases of prototyping. Yeah, we start from the top. We have a hypothesis that we want to solve. We define the prototype. Then we select which method of prototyping we're going to use. We're going to see a few methods later. Then we build the prototype that we're going to use. Then we launch it out there. We test it. We make users use it and test with it. And then we evaluate that testing phase in order to learn from it. And then maybe from this evaluation, we need to go back again to defining the prototype, because maybe the evaluation wasn't successful, that maybe we found that what we launched out there wasn't user-friendly, it wasn't cheap enough, it wasn't like, I don't know, it didn't give the response to the problem that we were trying to solve. So maybe we need to do the whole cycle again. But by doing this cycle over and over, finally, we're going to get to the product that we actually want to like launch and share. And that's going to be the launching phase. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So to introduce a little bit more of a framework into prototyping, there are different things that we need to consider when prototyping. First of all is the value proposition, and Paul has been talking a little bit about value proposition already. The value proposition is a cornerstone assumption about why and how a product or service provides a real value to the people, to the groups, or ecosystems. Yeah. So the value proposition, as we were mentioning before, regarding different segments, we're going to have maybe different value propositions for different segments. And it's very important to align what I'm proposing to my segment and where's the value in that? Yeah. So again, this is not about the product in itself, as Paul was saying before. It's not about what I want to launch, what I want to sell. It's more about what the client or the user needs. Yeah. And it has to be centered in that. I'm not trying to sell a pot of jam, as Paul was saying before. I'm trying to solve the problem that my consumer has, which is that she wants to reduce her carbon footprint. And when she's doing her shopping, she wants to eat better, healthier. She wants to avoid greenwashing products. She wants to consume locally. So it's not about the product in itself, the jam, the pot of jam. It's more about what the client or the user needs. Yeah. So here comes the big question. Our proposal, is it valuable enough for the people who need it or want it? Or is it not valuable enough? Because as Paul was saying before, maybe the segment client that I have, they already have a way to have a response to what they need, like another pot of jam of a different brand. But what is my proposition offering that's more valuable to them than in comparison to other things that maybe they already have? Yeah. And this is the key center question that you have to be thinking when you're thinking about a business. Yeah. So the value proposition has to be created during the definition of the business model. This is the basis. Yeah. And it's building on operational, social, emotional benefits that we provide and needs to be validated. So this is why we're talking now about prototyping, yeah? Because this value proposition is the one that we're going to take into account in order to prototype my idea, my service, my product, whatever I'm trying to create, yeah? We have here a little example on the bottom in red. For example, we believe city councils want to improve waste management in their municipalities because of the cost and citizens' pressure. And we believe that offering a digitalized waste management system, they will be content. Yeah, so this is the belief that we have. So what we would want to prototype in this example would be this digitalized waste management system. Yeah, we would have to create it and we would have to launch it. Before launching it, we would have to test it and we would see if people, in fact, use this digitalized waste management system and they use it, they buy it, that means they pay for it, and everybody's happy about it. Yeah. So this was just one example we had down here. Then the second concept I want to introduce, apart from we said value proposition, now we have the concept proof of concept. Can we do it? So one thing is that we have this idea, we want to do this idea, but then the question would be, can we do this idea? Yeah, and the proof of concept is it is a limited and controlled demonstration aimed at testing whether the idea is viable before investing in it. Yeah, so we have to take into consideration the cost, the time, the whole investment in the full development of this idea. Yeah. And it doesn't seek to validate, we're not there yet, whether the product is going to be desired by the market, but rather to confirm that it can be done. Yeah. So we have this idea, we decide we have this value proposition, and then we say, can we do this idea? Yeah. There's a lot of internal validation. Yeah. Within the team. You know, sometimes it's like the team that's creating the idea, can we do this? Do we have the technology to do this? Do we have the means? Do we have what we need in order to do it? And it also needs to be validated with potential stakeholders or investors who are going to put the money into helping me launch my idea. And it's focusing on testing that technology, testing that it works, that the processes are functional, and again, that we can, in fact, put it in place. Yeah. It does not need to be used with users or clients. This proof of concept, as I was saying, is more an internal thing, internal within the team, internal within the stakeholders and the investors, yeah? And it's the previous step to designing a minimum viable product, which is what I'm going to show you next. So it does not test the desirability and the usability of the product. We're not there yet. We're just reassuring ourselves in a way that what we want to do can be done. Yeah. And so now to the third concept is the one I just talked about, is the minimum viable product, the MVP, what we call, yeah? The MVP is the first functional version that has to be validated with the users, yeah? So in the previous step, the proof of concept, I wasn't testing it, I wasn't validating with users. Now I'm already thinking of the minimum product that needs to be validated with my potential users, yeah? So it's the next step. It's the following step for the prototyping. It's market oriented, which means that I'm already targeting my clients. Yeah, and it's the minimum viable product is widely used in digital projects. Not so much in all projects. Not all the projects are going to have MVP. Yeah, for example, a service maybe is not going to have an MVP, but like a digital project, it should have an MVP because it's going to give us core information that we need to have. Yeah, and I'm trying to be very clear with the words here because it's the minimum functional version of a product or a service that can be tested, yeah, within real users to obtain the data, the feedback, and to validate the key hypotheses regarding value, use, or demand, yeah? So unlike a prototype, an MVP is part of the prototyping, but the MVP must be usable and functional, yeah, even if it's simple. So here you have a summary of the three things that I've just mentioned. We have the prototype, the proof of concept, and the minimum viable product. And the proof of concept and minimum viable product are in fact part of what the prototyping is, okay? So maybe I'm not being very clear with mixing some things, but I want you to understand the difference between the three, even though those three things can be considered all part of prototyping, yeah? Prototype is we want to explore and communicate an idea in a tangible and visual way. Proof of concept is we want to verify the solution in a technical way. Is it technically feasible? And the minimum viable product is we want to validate that solution that it has demand and it provides real market value. Those are the three objectives that they each have. But they're all part of like the same idea. We want to test and we want to validate what we want, what the idea that we have and make sure it's feasible, yeah? Here you have audience. As I said, the proof of concept is more internal and the minimum viable product is more, it's external. We have real users that are testing it, yeah? And the prototype, the audience is both internal and external, yeah? The approach, in a simple way, prototype is this is how it could be. The proof of concept is, can it be done? And the minimum viable product is it worth doing? So these three questions are all, in fact, necessary to understand whether what I'm thinking about is going to make sense, is going to have a value, and it's going to sell in the end, yeah? The common format for the three, prototype, proof of concept, and minimum viable product, we have, for the prototype, we can do a sketch, we can do a mock-up, we can do a role play, we can do a render, we can do a conceptual video. We're going to see a few examples further on. The proof of concept is more technical in a way, so it's more a technical demo. And it's controlled and it's a controlled test, yeah. And the product, the minimum viable product, is actually a product in itself. It can be a land page, It can be a clickable app. It can be a minimum service. Yeah. The fidelity in the prototype, it can be very low or high, but it doesn't have to be functional. The proof of concept, the fidelity is very limited because it's more focused on technical features of the idea, and the minimum viable product has to be functional, even if it's a basic product. Yeah, it has to be functional because otherwise it's not going to be successful in the testing phase. Regards to orientation, the prototype is creative and communicative. So we are creating, we're communicating, we're thinking, we're testing. Yeah, it's more this creative part of the whole process. The proof of concept is more technical, and the minimum viable product is more commercial and user oriented. Yeah. And in regards to the last column here, I mean the last line, sorry, timing. The prototype is at the initial ideation and design phase. The proof of concept is a phase prior to the full development, and as well as the minimum viable product, which is the phase prior to scaling the solution. Yeah? I hope that was clear. Does anybody have questions, thoughts, anything they want to share? Yes. According to the timing, bro, these phases seem sequential. Is it ever practical to skip the proof of concept phase and move straight from a prototype to an MVP, or does that create too much technical debt? That's a very good question, Nadia. The proof of concept, I think no. It's not. I would say it's not necessary unless the product is very the product, the idea, the service I'm providing, I want to provide is very technical. So the proof of concept in a not so technical idea, I think it could be skipped. I don't know, Paul, if you agree with what I'm saying or if you want to add anything. Yeah, you're smiling.
Yeah. So basically, I think that to an extent, as you were discussing, like in elements that do not need like technical validation, and when I say technical, very often I mean like physical. It's also harder to think of like in consulting services, no? It's not so common to make a technical proof of concept before starting, like either prototyping and creating minimum viable products that can be, like tested as a usable idea from customers.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, anybody else has any questions regarding this? No? Okay, moving on. So, in order to create the prototype, how do we choose the different tools that we can use in order to prototype? Here, it's going to depend on what we want to prototype. As I was saying before, everything and anything can be prototyped, and the way of prototyping can vary depending on what we are prototyping. So, for example, if we want to prototype a product or service design, yeah, and we want to explore, we want to explore this product, we want to test it, we want to see how the product is interacting with the customers. We want to explore if it's functioning, if the service is functioning, if it has a use to the people I'm trying to sell my idea to. So here we have different tools that we can use to prototype. Yeah, we have what we call models. a product and we do a model of this product, and that's what we will be prototyping and testing. We have digital renders. In the digital world, it's called a render when you do different, analyze different options and you test them. We have desktop walkthroughs. We have digital designs, and we have also what we call theatricalization. I can't say that word. Theatricalization. Sorry, it's a little tricky word. Yeah. So for product or service designs, we have some tools. Then when it comes to internal organization, we can also prototype an organization, yeah? And we want to restructure this organization, yeah? Because we want to address things like team, governance, decision-making, how the organization is working. So here, what we're going to use is user journeys. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. We can also use organizational processes and what we call organizational charts. Yeah, I'll go more into this a little bit later. And then we have for commercialization, yeah? If we want to communicate or sell this concept or this idea, we have different tools. We have what we call the storyboard. Is like a story where we're like literally telling the story about a product or a service or whichever product we want to sell. We have what we call the communication piece. We also have action plans, and we have customer relationship funnel. Yeah. So as I was saying, depending on what we're prototyping, we can use some tools or other tools that make more sense. Oh, why is this not working? Sorry. My screen is frozen. What? Oh, there we go. No? Okay, here. So, sorry about that technical problem. Okay, so here we have some examples of product or service designs. I was telling you a few of them before, no models, digital renders, and here we have put some pictures of different examples of these different tools that we have. On the right, obviously you have the theatricalization of an idea, yeah, where we are actually putting a theater show and we're seeing how people react to that, what we're saying, what we're explaining, and etc. The models, yeah, models is we have an idea, for example, of a pot that we want to put a plant in, so we can do different models, see how people react to it, etc. Digital renders, we have some examples here of digital renders and desktop walkthroughs that we can use. And well, as I was saying, no, depending on what we want to prototype, well, it makes more sense to use one tool, or maybe you want to use more than one, and you can try your prototype with different tools. Yeah. Examples of, yes. How can we prototype an action in a biosphere reserve? That's a very good question. And we will get to it a little bit later. Once we finish the whole explanation. We can do activities required by people, however, we don't know how to stereotype them. Yes? Yeah, totally agree with what you're saying. We will, once we finish the whole explanation of prototyping, we will enter more into the biosphere reserve example. Okay, examples of commercialization, sorry. Storyboard. Storyboard is what we have here on the bottom left, yeah, is we have a little, oh, yeah, you're welcome. Storyboard is basically telling us the story of a product and what it means, what it intends to do, what it provides, and it's telling a story in a user-friendly way of people understanding what it is. The communication plan is very important in order to communicate what I'm selling. If I have a good communication plan, it's going to get further, it's going to reach, and I'm going to target who I'm selling, who I'm sending that plan for, and who depending on who's going to read it, I'm targeting as well this communication. The action plan is very important, to understand how we're going to be launching the product first, where it's going to be screened, where it's going to be shown, what different channels I'm going to be using, And client's funnel is this funnel here on the right, which is a way of going from top to bottom to a bigger wide scope to a smaller scope, in order to define better my solution, So first, I want to create awareness of the product. Once I do a big campaign, awareness, people are curious about it, then they enter into the discovery phase, Then they enter into the evaluation phase. Then they show the interest. And then finally, we get to the purchase of the product, So it's in this type of inverted funnel to go through different phases of launching the product, sorry. So here is an example of commercialization, that's called the user journey. Now, the user journey it's a very interesting tool. What it tells us is what the customer is seeing, feeling, thinking throughout the journey of first becoming aware of the product, being interested by it, deciding to buy it or not. So it's what basically this journey is telling us is what is this person thinking, what it fears, what it interests, how this person feels in general about this product, And by accompanying this journey throughout the different phases, we're going to be able to understand what the problems associated to the idea are and put a solution into them before actually getting there, So this user journey is also very aligned with what Paul was mentioning before about the empathy map. So what we want to try is to understand what this person thinks, what this person feels, what this person fears, what it gains, no? So in order, when we combine these two tools together, finally, it's going to help us understand better if what I'm designing makes sense for this particular customer, and then adapt it to this customer and other potentially customers, So it's basically, it's like a line, It's a line, it's a journey. And here we have an example of a customer who was shopping for a new car, And this customer, he needed a car. He had an idea of what the car he wanted. He knew how much money he had. He had a little bit of information about a brand. And then he decided to explore a bit the options that he had with the budget that he had and with different commercials that he had seen. So he starts exploring. Then he starts comparing these different options that he has and tries to see which one is better, which one adapts, And then he decides to test it. And finally, once he's done all of this, he negotiates, So a journey map can be done for any product. This was just one example of a shopping cart, and we'll enter into biosphere stuff later, I promise. But this was just laying out the theory for all of you to understand different tools that we can use, Regards to organization, I was mentioning before what organizational processes are. So for this, what we call the flow chart, is a very useful tool because it helps us represent visually, the different steps of an organization and what are the processes that take place within it in a sequential order, And this tool is very generic, but it can be adapted very easily to a wide variety of projects, products, services, and it can be very helpful when we are trying to to define what the internal organization should be and would be more efficient in a way. Yeah. So we have the flow chart, and with this flow chart, we can map operational, strategic, or support processes of any entity. Yeah. And it's also going to help us define protocols, the processes that take place in any organization, the steps, the flow. So, well, it's a document that evolves throughout time. Yeah, in any organization, there's always an evolution. It's a live document, as we say, and it's something that's in constant construction. So we strongly advise you guys to use this when you are thinking about your organization or how you work or what you want to put in place in the future. It's very useful. Yeah. So now, as I was saying before, we're going to enter into WEF and Nexus. More specific things that have to do with why you guys are here today. Yeah. So testing and prototyping in the WEF and Nexus. Yeah. Okay. So a little recall from what Paul already explained to you before. Yeah. We have the water, energy, food, ecosystem nexus approach. And this approach, yeah, it's highlighting this interdependence that we have between water, energy, and food security and ecosystems. Yeah. So in the WEF and Nexus, when we think about business, yeah, we need to we can't take this from out of our head. No, when we're talking about businesses in a biosphere reserve, which have this in common, no, the water, energy, food, and ecosystem. We need to keep in mind the mutual beneficial responses, yeah, that are based on the understanding the synergies of the water, the energy, agricultural policies, and the trade-offs, yeah. So when we're thinking about a business in a place that has all of this into account, we can't leave aside water, food, energy, ecosystems, yeah. And also, we need to take into account context-specific solutions and interventions. Yeah. So, in the specific context of Nexus WEFE, yeah, we need to define solutions that are based on different levels of interventions. Yeah, because we have the water, the energy, the food security, the ecosystem in general. So we need to keep in mind all of the different layers, yeah, of this nexus, yeah. And in order, well, I'm gonna pass it here. I wanted to come to this, no? So what we've done with Paul in order to integrate the testing and prototyping, taking this into account, is think of the impact indicators that we would have to take into mind when we're thinking about a business in a biosphere reserve. Impact indicators in water, energy, and food. Yeah, we have the ecosystem as a whole, sorry, but what would be the impact indicators in these three things? Yeah. So when we're thinking about a business, talking about fertilizers, for example, which was an example that Paul was using before, if we're using fertilizers in order to produce in the biosphere reserve, we need to think about what the fertilizers are going to be impacting on the water. Yeah. Is the water supply going to be affected? Is it still going to be reliable after I use these fertilizers? Yeah. Also, what is the price of water? Yeah. And what is the physical part of access to water? Yeah. Then, in terms of the energy access rate, yeah, are we accessing energy? Sorry, is there a continuity of the supply of energy? is the energy cost stable, or is it volatile? Yeah. Is it changing? Yeah. And sorry. And then in terms of food, the food availability, yeah, nutritional diversity, and household food expenditure. Yeah. So these are this is a set of potential indicators and not necessarily corresponding to unique activity or business model. Yeah, this is just potential indicators that we have come up with to take into account the WEFA nexus, sorry. We also have impact indicators on ecosystems or resources, yeah? When we were talking about water and energy and land, yeah, we have water stress or scarcity. We have surface or groundwater quality and environmental flow requirements. Yeah. One sec. Yeah, sorry. So we were talking about the indicators. Vale. Okay, so we were talking about the indicators, and then we were mentioning the impact indicators on ecosystems or resources. Yeah, Paul?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
essentially, just I'm catching it from here because we will then make you work on these examples. Essentially, what we are doing here, and in the next slide, is giving you an example on how you have to approach, as we said in the beginning, the benefits of interdependence and the trade-off of context-specific solutions, business models, but also public policies, but also, you know, NGOs work in a territory in the WEFE nexus. What does this mean? As we said earlier, it means that a business model that tackles a specific need and that pursues one impact, let's say in food availability or nutritional diversity, which could be, for instance, the organic fertilizers for farmers in a biosphere reserve. It could have also, it has positive impacts on food security, but it might have impacts on the ecosystem or in the resources in terms, for instance, of water stress or land productivity or land use change. Okay, so basically, this is an example, as Blanca said, a potential set of indicators that you might want to consider when evaluating a social business model through the lenses of the WEFE nexus. Okay. I see we have a question here, which is, when prototyping a new solution, how do we prioritize which of these indicators to measure first, especially if a project improves one, like water affordability, but potentially risks another, like energy? That's a great question, and it's a big methodological challenge, to be fair. That's why actually in this slide, we put them, first of all, both one next to each other. Why? Because the first thing is to map potential indicators. And then the second step, which we did not plan to discuss today, but maybe we can have it as a potential discussion for following sessions, is how to weigh these indicators. No? As you are saying, how do I weigh whether water affordability is more important than, you know, potential risks related to energy or to land productivity or land or soil health. There are methodological, let's say, techniques to assign value to potential impacts, to costs and benefits, which could be monetary in the most, like typical example, but could also be in terms of reach, how many people are affected by different changes in the ecosystem, positive and negatives, could be related to the value we give to different ecosystems, considering how diverse they are and how common they are compared to the same ecosystem in the reserve or in other reserve. So short answer is we cannot give you now an answer on how to prioritize, but we can we can note this as a homework to give you tools to give weights to different impacts. Nadia, I think that's an interesting question, and that will definitely come up in next sessions. If you want now that you are engaged, we will switch to the example, okay, which is the following slides. Basically, if you want, I can share the screen, Blanca. So we will ask you to. I hope you can see my screen properly now. I do not see you. So basically,
we can't see your screen yet, Paul.
Great. So when we think of prototyping, Blanca was saying we need to choose the hypothesis to validate, because not all hypotheses will be resolved in the same way. Some can be resolved, by interviewing someone that works in government, for instance, a hypothesis related to the legal validity of our business model in a protected environment like a biosphere reserve. Some can be resolved in a survey, for instance, if it relates to whether families are interested in that type of product. Or some can be resolved by conducting observations of potential customers. For instance, do we see people accessing like food or whatever just because it's near their home, but if they had something near that aligns better with their values, would that work even better for them and they would switch in their consumption model? So these are different ways of validating a hypothesis. We're not going to ask you to do all of them. As you will see, we will go with a very simple example that will allow you to then do more elaborated hypotheses, or help entrepreneurs do more elaborated hypotheses later on. Besides choosing the hypothesis to validate, willingness to pay, interest in our differential value, etc., we need to choose the target audience, define the characteristics of the users who will test the prototype. We need to keep in mind who are the early adopters. What does this mean? This means that, as we discussed earlier, we might have more than one customer segment that are or represent, or that form and create our market segment. For instance, if we want to start making organic fertilizers that comply with regulatory measures in place in biosphere reserves, we might have a customer segment that is a local producer in the biosphere reserve that has some specific needs. They need lower costs. They need some specific characteristics of the product, that it's not so smelly or whatever. And we have another customer segment, which might be big corporations with a social corporate responsibility policy. And these might be not the early adopters. Why? Because they will adopt the product once the small farmer has used it, because it's when the value proposition is activated for bigger corporations. That's an example. But we can think of many different products in which early adopters might be different. For instance, following the example with the jams, do you think that the early adopter will be the father or the mother, no? As we discussed earlier, Sophia, that wants to reduce the carbon footprint of her diet and eat healthy, or the early adopter would be the young people with lower budget who only want tasty jams? It will probably be an older person, and that will then activate the potential value to new customers. Okay, so we need to think of these early adopters to start creating the niche, the market segment for our product. And then we need to choose the type of prototype. As Blanca said, we need to make something quick, to make something that doesn't use much of our resources, but at the same time that it serves the purpose, no? That it is efficient and answers the questions to our hypothesis and to our market segment or customer segment. So essentially, and summarizing, what do we want to validate? For and with whom will we validate it? Why for and with whom? Sorry, another nuance. If you think about it, we said earlier, it might not be the same, the user and the payer. So maybe we need to, groups testing our prototype. Which prototype will we make and how will we prototype? So what we would like you to do is help us build a customer segment. You can do it like in the chat, giving ideas, giving me names or needs. Our suggestion would be that we work on the example of the fertilizer. Okay, let's start thinking. That's exactly what we should not do. I think of the product before the need. But just to make sure we are all in the same page, we thought that we could use this last half an hour to think, especially those of you that are in one room all together in some cases, if you can discuss, okay, if I was to start producing an organic fertilizer that complies with the regulations in a biosphere reserve for local producers, how would you describe the customer segments? And now it's your time to shine, basically. You are invited to contribute by any means you like. Let me see if I can. I will stop sharing 1 second just to see your faces and reorganize my tabs. So, do we have ideas? Do we have examples? Should I go on with our example? Okay, Nura. The ones who will buy the product are farmers. Okay, good point. That's a start. We are talking. Okay, great, Veronica. Thank you for the. Yeah, let's do something, because I see that those that are in a group are thinking out loud on themselves. So those of you that are at home alone, please feel free to speak on the chat. We'll wait also for people who are together, and we'll give an answer later on. Let's give you 3 minutes. Local farmers and entrepreneurs, local farm stores. Okay. Would you like to, those of you that already gave an initial answer, Tatiana, Bukhra, Nura, would you give me an answer on how are they? Do they have a lot of budget? Do they not have a lot of budget? Are they easy to reach near highways, or are they far away from big means of transportation? Do they have large, fields, or do they have small ones? Do they have a legal figure? People to have a garden at home. Okay, that's one option as well. That's interesting. Mm. They have a legal figure, for instance, that allows them to receive subsidies, or are they individuals at home that will have no access to subsidies for fertilizers? What are the key characteristics that you think are relevant for this customer segment? I'm taking notes of your answers, by the way, and we will send you the example we will produce all together. Okay, I will give you some additional ideas on how are they. Do you think they could be, for instance, our initial approach, it's a low revenue, low income, small entrepreneur or self-employed person in villages in the reserve. So we define them hard to reach. No, not close to big transportations. Retired elderly people who have gardens, very common. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Come on now. Why do they buy? Let's move to the need. Do you think they buy because they are not happy with the production of their current production, productivity levels? Do they buy because they want to grow, or do they buy because they have customers that are underserved at their moment, like people that ask for their food, but we cannot give you anything more because we reached our production limit, or it's a bit more uncertain, like no, they want to grow but they still don't have not identified the new clients. Or maybe we could even say they just want to buy because they need to comply with some regulations, for instance. Okay, they are mandated by regulatory authorities to use some new specific type of fertilizers. Okay, because they need, I saw Nura said, because they want to grow as well. With the rising price of imported chemical fertilizer, organic options, especially if produced locally from waste, offer a more stable and lower price point. Thank you, Nadia. That's a great contribution. Indeed, we are seeing, as we discussed in the beginning, maybe the need is a need for stability, stable price. Sometimes it doesn't even need, at this point, it doesn't even need to be low. Sometimes it just needs to be stable, right? The price and allow us to make plans. Okay, that's an interesting point. So we have to identify the needs of these groups. Question: are they satisfying this need in a different way at the moment? Are these people already producing something? Probably the answer is yes. But the need to grow, they are either not satisfying it and assuming a small production that is a small production that does not allow them to grow as a business, and maybe it will push the business to disappear, or maybe they are indeed using fertilizers, but as Nadia said, it's expensive chemical fertilizers that they need to be bought in the city, so they need heavy transport of product that it's smelly, of that it's not of great quality, and also it has it's more expensive and prices are unstable. Okay, so we need to know if they satisfy this need and how. And once we know how they do it, okay, what gains do they have? I'm gonna show you the example already that we had produced. Okay, happiness. Well, besides all the problems, they still can say that they somehow produce clean food with more or less good harvests, but they have some big pains, no? Which is that prices are very high, or maybe there are like physical problems or transportation problems. So these are the things that our business model, our idea, needs to consider. They have a need. They have a way to satisfy it at the moment. There are some good things of this current way of satisfying this need, and some very bad things. So we are going to tackle the pains, and we are going to maximize or offer something that is better in terms of gains. Okay? Hope this more or less makes sense. Nadia says, many smallholders use untreated animal manure from their own livestock or neighbors. Indeed, exactly. That's another thing that we should say about how they are satisfying this need at the moment. What is the good thing about this? They have small production, so they want to reach another level of production. Yes, Bukhra, exactly. So what's the good thing of this untreated animal manure? Well, that it's very cheap because it's from their own livestock or neighbors. It has very low transportation costs, from my farm to the field. But it has also some pains, which is that it is small scale. I cannot have as much as I would like. Sometimes it might be as also unpredictable, especially if it comes from neighbors. Okay, great. That's great what you are doing at the moment. So based on this, we should be able to say, okay, what we want to offer. Okay, we wrote a suggestion here, but maybe you have a different idea of what we should offer and what should be the value proposition. But that's an initial approach on how to do this exercise. Okay, other ideas, other examples, other thoughts? As we were saying, sorry. Yeah, so as we said earlier, there might be another customer segment, and these two together create our market segment. Okay, what could be our second segment? Corporate, big agricultural producers, okay, with large budgets, located outside the reserve, but sometimes in the region or in the same country, and driven by corporate social responsibility policies. Okay, and why would they be interested? Well, what do they need? They need to meet some ESG targets. They need to reduce emissions. They need a better story to shareholders and customers. Okay, they need different things that they actually could satisfy in many different ways. So sometimes we could say that they buy some industrial green labeled fertilizers or whatever, from other producers, or sometimes the green story, they satisfy it in a different way, which is not through the fertilizers, but through the transportation. No, all our trucks are electric. and that's how we reduce emissions. Okay, that's a different way of satisfying the same need of meeting ESG targets and reducing carbon emissions. But we are offering a different way of reducing that need. Like, what's the good thing of their current way of doing it? Yeah, they already have some certified labels, or they already, it's very practical to them. Sometimes the main gain of people for low quality solutions is practicality. It's because it's close. It's because it's cheap. It's because it's my cousin, the one running the traditional business. Okay. And that's the gain. That's the thing we need to protect. We have to try, whenever we design a business model, or when we design a product or service, we cannot base it on taking gains, like current gains from customers. We need to protect those. If they like that it's close to home, we need to be as close to them as well as possible. Okay. And what's the pains that they have? And that's where we can offer improvements. They are accused of greenwashing. There is a rising cost of carbon offsets, or there is pressure. Sometimes the main pain is pressure from other stakeholders. For instance, if our if our client are big corporations, maybe the main pain is that customers are pushing, and the main need, the main why do they buy, is that they need to satisfy customers, and customers are not satisfied with products that are pollutant. Okay, so that's an example on how to make this this fish. Okay, how to identify customer segments. Either you are an entrepreneur yourself, or you work by helping entrepreneurs create and develop business idea. That's an interesting first step. Okay, what does my customer segment look like? How big is it? How many of them are there? What are their needs, pains, and gains? Cool. Second example, or second sort of exercise that we want you to keep at home. How do I design a prototype? This would be the steps of prototyping. Okay, first, as we said, define what hypothesis you want to test. It's a problem hypothesis, a solution hypothesis, product hypothesis, market hypothesis. This could be, is there a demand? The market hypothesis would be, is there a demand? Are there people actually looking for this product? And it is, you could solve it through interviews or through surveys to potential consumers. The product hypothesis would be, does this fertilizer actually work? And the way of testing it would be going to the field and testing it in 6 months. Or the problem would be, do people actually care about the smell of the fertilizers, or do people actually care about the transportation costs? And the way to test it would be interviews with big stakeholders in the sector. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So no examples of hypotheses. Local farmers will adopt new fertilization method if it is delivered as clean, or if it is delivered at home because it saves physical labor and travel time, or if it is cheaper. What's the question I am asking myself about this prototype? What's the prototype that you will create and start building it? How do I want to do it? Our proposal, our idea is that you start by creating a user journey and service, like for or a pilot for your service or product. Okay, you will now go to the example. You describe the profile of the users you will validate the product with, small scale farmers and gardeners. We can call her Maria. And you go out and validate. You have an elevator pitch, or you do a survey, or you discuss the elements of the product that you are more uncertain of. And at the end, you reflect on the results. Did I solve the hypothesis about people caring about the cleanliness of the fertilizer? Or did I solve only the hypothesis about the transportation costs? Or did I solve only the technical hypothesis, the one related to whether the fertilizer works, but not if there is an actual demand? Last 10 minutes. Thank you, Veronica. Okay, and that's the user journey that I would like you to, let's say, test. This is what you do when you want to plan a prototype, and then you start thinking of how you represent and how you implement that product. So as Blanca was saying in the beginning, a user journey map is like this visual representation. It can be nicer, it can be uglier, it can be many things, but it's a visual representation of the process that customers go through when interacting with your business, with your organization. And this diagram is an attempt to represent the steps that they will go through before, during, and after choosing a product. I would like that you do that for, an idea that you have, or a company that that operates in the biosphere reserve. But I will give you an example, and then we can go back to working together. So, for instance, what could be the starting point? The starting point could be either receiving the commercial input, or could be identifying the need by themselves. For instance, someone is almost, desperate due to the low production of their field in this year. And they have a big problem with that, and they speak out loud about that concern in the sales point, for instance. That's when you identify the potential customer, or when they receive the first commercial input. I see you have a problem. I might have a solution. Think about what would be the place and time in which this would happen for your idea. Either if it's a fertilizer, or if it's an arts lesson, for instance, I don't know. I go to school and I see people complaining about the fact that, the opportunities for extracurricular activities for their kids have closed because of the demographic crisis and the exodus of population from rural areas. That's the situation in which you identify the need, and you have the first opportunity to offer or exchange some commercial inputs. What would be the next step? Consultation or expert visit, Seeing exactly, observing, discussing indeed the situation, the problem. Going to the field, checking the numbers to see actual productivity losses, or talking with more parents to see actually how big has been the problem of extracurricular activities closing in this year. Okay, that would be the second step of this user journey. Next step, cost-benefit analysis. What do they gain, and what would they cost them? This sounds very fancy, but it actually can be very simple. Okay, we can make it always more elaborate. But think of this, like once you make the expert visit or the consultation to see exactly the needs and the width of the market segment, calculate the cost for them and the benefits for them of a new business solution, a new business model. Next step, test. Make tests. With the fertilizers, it could be related to smells, it would be related to colors, it would be related to productivity gains. And maybe there is some negotiation here because they need adjustments in some of the features of the product, and close at the end with contract agreements. If tests and negotiations are a success, go with contract agreements. What exactly you need to observe? What exactly are they looking for? Are they looking for a one-off solution? Is this going to be a long-term project, or is it going to be, like something that will finish by the end of this year? Do I have guarantees of a sustained commercial relation, or is it something that it's solving something, it's solving a problem today, but maybe not tomorrow. And if everything goes smooth, maybe, and that's the core of social business models, and we will discuss this in later sessions, you have to end with advocacy, with incorporating people into either governance or the values or the proposal or the core idea of the product, because they do not only believe in the product or the service, they believe in the need, in the solution, and in participating in it beyond the idea of a commercial relationship. That's an easy example of how you could build a user journey and start testing it. Why? Because in each of these steps, you are checking the success of your idea. You are validating the hypothesis of whether a demand exists. You are validating the hypothesis in the test of whether the product is interesting. You are in the contract agreement, you are validating the hypothesis of whether the relationship will be long-term. Okay, so that's a way of start testing some of your hypotheses. That would be it. We can, there's a last small bit, but we're running out of time, which is thinking of the impact indicators. Okay, basically what we wanted to say here is, look, as we said, this is not a unique example. That's a set of indicators in which you have to select which of those are actually relevant to your business idea or to your project. But since it's a bit late, we'll go into it later in time, and we will discuss the weighting of the indicators. That would be it, our proposal, and that's what you will find in these slides when you receive them. When you receive them, is that you start working on the practical exercises before the next session. Think a little bit about customer segments. Think a little bit about the user journey of a product or service, and maybe feel free to reach out, send it through email, or share it in the next session. Okay, that's a little bit it. I'm gonna share the floor with Veronica now, but I think we have a couple of surveys to answer as well, right, Veronica? Do you want to go for it yourself?
Hi. We have some questions at the end. We also tomorrow we are going to review about the AI translation, because we have some problems, at least here in Spanish. I don't know if all the Spanish people have the same problem with us. And sorry. We have some questions, yes, some surveys to be done for the at the end of all the sessions. So don't worry about that.
Okay. Okay. I'm assuming they will be sent through email, the service. So that would be it for today. Thank you very much for your attention. We hope it was interesting. We hope the tools are useful.
Thank you so much, everybody, and see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.